This is the best movie that's come out so far this year. Go see it. Holy shit, this is a great movie. I mean, I won't say I'm totally surprised by that. The trailers all look solid and the premise is great enough that you kind of had to assume it to be at least passable. But the idea that Get Out is Jordan Peele or any director's debut feature is unbelievable, even when you know it to be an absolute fact. It's so bold, vibrant, solidly constructed, and confident, it just doesn't feel possible that whoever made it hasn't spent at least 3 or 4 previous films getting good at it. And it holds up so damn well as a horror movie that the fact they also decided to make it about something almost feels like a free upgrade. Now, I'm going to try to stay as spoiler-free as possible here, but just from the trailers, you already know that Get Out is supposed to be a horror movie about racism. But that's not entirely the case. You see, one of the most reliable ways to create a scary story is to identify familiar situations where the audience can recognize, usually causing someone to be uneasy, paranoid, or even outright frightened. Being lost, trying to navigate an unfamiliar area in the dark, sensing that someone's lying to you but not being sure why, hearing noises when you thought you were all alone, that kind of thing. And then leading the audience to imagine a scenario where those feelings are entirely justified. You really are in danger. Something really is out to get you. They really are conspiring to get you, and so forth. And let's face it is a near universal human truth that one of the scariest questions to find yourself asking is, what if I'm not just being paranoid? The cleverness of Get Out is recognizing that one of the main things that makes people act ill at ease, uncomfortable, and thus susceptible to paranoia in 2017 is race and racism. The bravery of Get Out, though, is deciding to build a whole horror film around the idea of racial tension as a surface-level manifestation of a deeper, more sinister tension. But the genius of the film is that Peele and company then decide to take that basic premise and do something a bit more thoughtful with it. Now, the setup is that a guy named Chris is going to spend the weekend with his girlfriend Rose and her wealthy parents, who he's meeting for the first time. And he's on edge because she hasn't yet told him that Chris happens to be black, which she assures him won't matter, but he knows is going to matter a whole bunch. Once there, things start piling up that make Chris increasingly sure that he was right to be worried, and pretty soon he gets the sense that he might have stumbled into a genuinely dangerous situation involving secret meetings, hypnosis, other black characters who don't seem quite right, and basically that he might need to, well, get out. But here is where this gets interesting. See, honestly, a genuine, unapologetic black perspective is so seldom presented in the horror genre especially, that if all this film had on its mind was giving Peele a venue to explore his feelings through the prism of genre and, well, vent on the subject of, hey, you know, white people, sometimes you can be kind of scary, it'd still be pretty damn refreshing just for being different. But Get Out clearly doesn't want to settle for just being a novelty item. It wants to really work as a serious thriller, which ends up meaning that it has to approach the subject of racism as horror from a more subtle, unnerving angle. You see, the thing is, Hollywood actually kinda likes making movies about racism, especially movies about the really obvious racism practiced in the past, or by blatant, proudly ignorant, outright Neanderthal KKK type folks. You know, racism stories that make modern day white people feel good about not being back then or not being those other bad kind of white people. It's a lot less fond, however, of tackling the more subdued, ingrained, passive varieties of bigotry. You know, the kind that upscale, well-meaning, good white people, like, say, many Hollywood movie executives, who otherwise pride themselves on not being like back then or those other people, might be uncomfortable in recognizing themselves in. And that is precisely where Get Out decides to plant its flag, because it kinda has to. I mean, think about it. If Chris walked into Rose's parents' house and they had up like a big Confederate flag on the wall, or a swastika, or a KKK hood, or perhaps some other variety of adorable little hat, well, there's no suspense or tension to be built up there. He'd immediately know, oh, these are scary, racist bad guys, I gotta get the fuck out of here. So what Get Out presents us with instead is a family of nice, well-to-do, worldly, enthusiastically liberal, good white people who present themselves as the furthest possible thing from racist. In fact, they can't wait to tell Chris how they voted for Obama, how they respect and appreciate his culture, how all of their favorite actors and musicians and athletes are black, and how cool and fashionable and in many ways better they consider black people to be. You know, the kind of stuff that these sorts of people probably intend as nice and progressive, without even considering that they're still just demonstrating they see him more as a color than a person. Now that's an experience one imagines a lot of Get Out's audience is going to find depressingly familiar and relatable, which is why it makes it such a perfect foundation for the more conventional horror elements that gradually emerge as the invisible walls of something ain't right here start closing in around the hero. And while you might think you've already figured out what's probably going on and what the bad guys are up to from the trailers, like I said, this is a movie about defying your expectations. But once again, while it's giving you all of this nice deep stuff to think about and chew on after the movie, Get Out never stops working as a viscerally effective thriller on a pure technical level. It's unquestionably the best use of this setup since the original Stepford Wives, but whereas that film, justly considered a classic though it may be, kinda loses a step once we get to the big reveal, Get Out takes off like a fucking shot and somehow becomes just as good at being a straightforward survive the bad guys horror flick as it was at being a topical suspense movie. There's a dozen places where this could have gone wrong and fallen apart, but Jordan Peele has clearly come to play, and he has delivered one for the record books. Get Out is an instant horror classic and the best film that's been released so far in 2017. 4 stars, it's a genuine game changer, go see it.